In the history of engineering, some engines weren't just powerful, they were outrageous. Machines that pushed the limits of physics, common sense, and even legality. Engines so extreme that they shocked regulators, terrified competitors, and sometimes nearly destroyed the sport or the vehicles they powered. These weren't engines designed for balance or efficiency. They were experiments, gambles, and sometimes acts of pure madness. They were built in times of war, in eras of racing revolutions, and in moments when companies wanted to show the world that impossible was just a word. This is not just a countdown. It's a journey through mechanical insanity. From roaring beasts that spat fire, to turbines that screamed like jets, to rockets that shook the very earth beneath them. This is the story of the top 10 most powerful engines that shouldn't have existed. The BRM H16 was the definition of overcomplication. Engineers literally took two 1.5-liter V8s, stacked them, and joined them with a nightmare of gears and shafts. The result was a 16-cylinder, 400-horsepower engine revving up to 11,000 RPM. On paper, it looked unbeatable. In reality, it was one of the heaviest F1 engines ever made, over 250 kilograms, and fragile to the point of comedy. Mechanics cursed it, spending entire days just to change cylinder heads. The engine overheated, leaked oil, and shook the car to pieces. And yet, in a rare stroke of luck, Jim Clark drove a Lotus 43 fitted with the H16 to victory at the 1966 U.S. Grand Prix. It proved the engine had potential when it wasn't busy destroying itself. The H16 is remembered not as a triumph, but as a warning. Sometimes ambition without restraint creates monsters that should never have left the drawing board. War breeds strange solutions, and the Chrysler A57 multibank was one of the strangest. Instead of designing a new engine, Chrysler literally bolted 5 inline-6 engines around a central crankshaft. The result, a 30-cylinder monstrosity producing 425 horsepower at 2,400 RPM. It powered Sherman tanks, hefty, mass-produced machines that helped win the war. But the A57 was absurdly complex. If one cylinder bank had issues, mechanics often had to dismantle several others just to access it. It guzzled fuel, weighed too much, and was almost impossible to keep running smoothly in the chaos of battle. Still, it did its job. Thousands were built, proving that in wartime, brute force and availability mattered more than elegance. The multi-bank wasn't great engineering, it was survival engineering, a patchwork solution that somehow worked. The Napier Saber was one of the most ambitious piston aircraft engines ever built. With 24 cylinders in an H configuration, liquid-cooled, it produced up to 3,500 horsepower at 3,850 RPM. This monster powered the Hawker, Typhoon, and Tempest, fighters designed to rip through German defenses. With their Saber engines screaming, they could outclimb and outrun nearly everything in the sky. But reliability was a nightmare. Cold starts were nearly impossible, and constant overheating meant mechanics spent endless hours just keeping them alive. Despite the headaches, when it worked, the Saber turned these aircraft into legends. They became low-altitude monsters, destroying tanks, trains, and convoys with devastating power. The Saber showed how far piston technology could be pushed, right up to the edge of destruction. Imagine your daily car powered by a jet. The Chrysler turbine car was exactly that. Instead of pistons, it had a turbine engine spinning at 36,000 RPM, producing around 130 HP. The brilliance? It could run on almost any fuel: gasoline, diesel, kerosene, even tequila. 55 were built, handed out to regular families for real-world testing. Drivers loved them. The smooth ride, the futuristic whine of the turbine, the feeling of piloting something out of science fiction. But the auto industry wasn't ready. The turbine required exotic materials, was too expensive to mass produce, and threatened the traditional car industry. Chrysler destroyed most of them. Only 9 remain today. The turbine car wasn't a failure. It was a glimpse into an alternate automotive universe, one where cars didn't rumble. They screamed like jetliners. The Fiat S76 was raw, untamed insanity. Known as the Beast of Turin, it carried a 28.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, producing 290 horsepower at 1,900 RPM. Each cylinder was bigger than an entire modern car engine. It spat flames from its exhaust, shook like an earthquake, and roared with a fury unmatched even today. Drivers risked everything just to keep it under control. But it wasn't just for show. It shattered records, reaching nearly 190 90 kilometers per hour when most cars struggled at 80. The beast wasn't built for comfort, safety, or practicality. It was built to terrify, to dominate, and to prove that Fiat could create the most outrageous machine of its era. Watching it run today is like staring into the face of mechanical madness and smiling. The Wasp Major was the king of piston engines, a 71-liter, 28-cylinder radial giant. It produced 3,800 horsepower at 2,700 RPM. It powered massive planes like the B-36 Peacemaker bomber, but its complexity was staggering. 4 rows of 7 cylinders meant endless overheating problems. Oil leaks were constant. Ground crews often spent more time fixing engines than pilots did flying planes. The Wasp Major represented the ultimate ceiling of piston aviation. Bigger, louder, and more powerful than anything before, but also the end of an era. After it, jets arrived, making engines like this instantly obsolete. It was the swan song of piston power, grand, flawed, and unforgettable. When Bugatti unveiled the Veyron, the automotive world gasped. A quad-turbocharged 8-liter W16 producing 1,001 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, capable of exceeding 400 kilometers per hour. It wasn't just fast. It was the fastest production car in the world, but it came at a staggering cost. Volkswagen lost millions on every car sold. The engine needed 10 radiators, oil changes costing thousands, and special Michelin tires, $40,000 a set, that had to be shipped back to France for replacement. The Veyron wasn't practical, it wasn't logical, but it didn't need to be. It was a statement that engineering could break every boundary if money was no object. The Lotus 56 looked like it came from another planet. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney turbine generating 500 horsepower at 45,000 RPM, it didn't need gears, pistons, or even a clutch. At the 1968 Indy 500, Joe Leonard nearly won, driving a car that seemed destined to change racing forever. Rivals panicked, lobbying to have turbines banned. The rule makers caved, outlawing them almost immediately. The Lotus 56 wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary, but politics, fear, and tradition killed it before it had a chance to thrive. A reminder that motorsport isn't always about innovation. Sometimes it's about protecting the status quo. Ferrari's Tipo 044/1 was the last of the great Formula One V12. Producing 750 horsepower at 15,000 RPM, it screamed with a sound fans still describe as pure music. But the world was changing. Rivals like Williams and McLaren ran lighter, more efficient V10s. Ferrari's V12 was too heavy, too thirsty, and too complex to keep up. By 1996, even Ferrari had to admit defeat, switching to a V10. The 044/1 wasn't banned. It was out-evolved. Yet it remains legendary, remembered not for winning, but for the way it made people feel. Its sound was an anthem, its presence unforgettable. The final roar of an era when Formula One engines weren't just machines, they were living creatures. The F1 rocket engine was the king of them all, the most powerful single-chamber engine ever built. Each produced 1.5 million pounds of thrust, equivalent to 32 million horsepower, at around 6,700 RPM turbine speed. 5 of them powered the Saturn V, the rocket that sent humans to the moon. But building them was a nightmare. Early tests ended in massive explosions that shook the desert for miles. Engineers doubted it could ever be stable. And yet, when perfected, it worked flawlessly. No rocket engine since has matched it. Too costly, too dangerous, too colossal. The F1 wasn't just an engine. It was humanity declaring war on gravity and winning. These engines remind us that progress often comes not from caution, but from obsession, and sometimes madness. They were too big, too complex, too expensive, or simply too far ahead of their time. And yet they left behind a legacy of awe. In the end, engineering isn't just about what's possible. It's about daring to go too far. And these engines prove one thing above all: some limits were made to be broken.